Well, I read a quote, and I can't attach it to anybody. It's the guy said, the problem today is all the intelligent people are completely filled with doubt, and all the stupid people are filled with confidence. And I thought, that's a great description of where we are. And then he went on and said, he didn't say any more than that. What I added to that in my head was, and all the godly wise people are silent. So that's a good description of where we are in our culture. All the intelligent people are filled with doubt. All the stupid people are filled with confidence. And all the godly people are silent. And so we can't change the first two, but we certainly can change the third one that I've attached. We can't really be silenced any further. Now we just came through a time where most churches have celebrated sanctity of life, but I'm understanding that this has probably been one of the lowest representations of that in years, when it ought to be going the other direction. But it doesn't surprise me that less and less churches are talking about this issue. This is the kind of issue that if we stop talking about it, it rolls off the table. It's kind of like spiritually, it's like prayer. We talk a lot about prayer, but the first thing people abandon is prayer. And so I want us to push forward with this. I did a Bible study for a group called Thrive. Thrive is a large pregnancy center down by North Park, and they have 3 or 4 locations. And they were giving, when I got there, they were giving all their reports. This particular report was done by a nurse named Mary, and when I saw it, I said, "Can I have that? Would you give that to me?" Because it just for me crystallized what kind of fight we're in, because it's changing. Sunday, when we have Sanctity of Life, I'm going to talk a lot about the heartbeat bill. And how many of you are familiar with the heartbeat bill? Okay, that's out of Mississippi and Texas. And the great thing about the bill is that the Supreme Court holds it up, withheld it. You know why they withheld it? Anybody know? They always hear things, and they're about corporations or about government entities, and yet this is about individuals. The tricky thing that they did in the heartbeat bill is they made it possible for an individual to sue a pregnancy center if they did an abortion. And that is not an arena constitutionally where the Supreme Court can really jump in and rule. So the only thing they could rule is to withhold it. Now, they ruled it that way, and it was a clean sweep. Think about that for a minute. There's no such thing as a clean sweep in the Supreme Court, not in all the years I've been watching them. And really, we now are looking at, and we got a new thing developing because we have one of the liberal judges now stepping away, which that's just great news. And so now we will embark into absolute warfare, probably, as our president will put somebody forward, and hopefully the Republicans will have more decorum than the Democrats had when the last Supreme Court judge was placed up, the last 2. So it's just another fight on the Supreme Court. Now, our tendency is to look at the Supreme Court and say, okay, it's got conservatives and moderates. I did that wrong. Conservatives and moderates. Far right, far left. And we keep talking about if we have a majority of conservatives, we will win. That's not the way it works at all. They're broken up in groups of 3s. So the 9 people on the court now, you have conservatives that aren't really conservative. That's a misnomer. When you say, oh, those judges are conservative, they're always going to vote conservative. No, they're always going to vote constitutionally correct. Now, that happens to be a conservative thought, and so that's why conservatives say, well, we got 3 conservative judges. That's why those opposing such judges will try to tag them with the name of conservative when they really deserve the name constitutionalist. So that means that all they care about in their ruling while they're on the Supreme Court is to be constitutionally correct. By the way, that's what you want on the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is designed to operate as a check and balance, and it's there to protect the Constitution. It's not there to protect you. It's there to protect the Constitution. It's not there to serve a political party. It's there to protect the Constitution. So you have three that are constitutionalists, and then you have what they call moderate, and you have three more moderates. And here's where they vary. Actually, two of them are pseudo-constitutionalists, and one of them is minorly liberal in terms of thought processes. But here's the way they think. They think about the rulings that they're going to make and how it's going to affect their personal legacy. Okay? So if you can present something to them and they don't have to go out on a limb on the conservative side, and it's still not going to affect their legacy or be seen as a negative decision on their part, they'll make it. And then you have three liberals who care only about change, only about looking at the Constitution as though it's a living document that they can somehow down in history be credited for changing. So that's what you got. And that's why you're never going to see 6-3, for instance. You're going to see 5-4. And it has to be written up correctly. It has to be presented correctly for them to understand all that. So this particular law, for all of them, they realized there's nothing that we can rule on here because this is about an individual suing an organization for doing something. And so the law is not going to make it. It's going to be debated and debated and debated, and we're hoping that it gets debated for a long period of time, because as long as it's debated, Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers are afraid to do abortions. And the people that are behind the heartbeat law know that, and so it was put in there just to disturb all that. And so now that'll go on for quite some time. And then eventually they'll come back around. Matter of fact, the governor of California has already said if the bill is upheld by the Supreme Court, the first thing he will do is he will create a bill that will do exactly the same thing against guns. That an individual can sue another individual for carrying a certain kind of gun. You see? So you see how tricky the law is? See, technically the law is very simple. It just takes a lot of lawyers and judges to complicate it. But what the governor doesn't understand is when you talk about abortion, you're talking about a constitutional right, the right to life. Liberty and justice for all. So it is a validation of the Constitution. That's why they don't want to rule on it. Three of them don't want to rule on it because it'll hit their legacy. Three of them don't want to rule on it because they just don't want any part of it because they're liberal and they can't win, no matter how they rule. And the other three are withholding the Constitution, saying this is not our business. We have no place in this to make any kind of decision. So that's kind of why that's there, and we're thrilled it's there. And what the governor of California doesn't understand is he's going to argue that he can pass the same kind of law. He has forgotten there's a Second Amendment. So he's going to be arguing against the Constitution. He just never took civics in high school or something, so he doesn't know that. So I am thrilled for him. I would love for it to just go through just to watch him try that, because there's not a Supreme Court judge that's going to go near that. That would be a 6-3 vote for sure. So anyway, that's just that. What I want to talk to you about was majorly enlightening for me and changes kind of the battle strategy from the enemy's side, from those who are pro-choice, from those who have taken the position to be pro-choice and have pushed that off on America, the one kind of dark blot since any time I've ever known America. And as America as a country is working very hard to be a great country, to be fair. It's never been fair since 1972 to the unborn. To make this a law and to have Roe v. Wade go this far and to recognize, just as we were attacked on 9/11 in 2001, we appropriately went after the enemy. On that day, there were approximately 3,000 lives that were lost on that day, that one day. 3,000 Americans. Think back, you remember how people responded to losing 3,000 Americans in one day. I mean, we took all of our resources and we went after the enemy. And people wrote songs, and people got patriotic, and people got excited, and people went out and joined the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, and we appropriately went after the enemy. Every day in America, 3,000 innocent lives are snuffed out because of legalized abortion. Every day. That means the same amount of people we lost on 9/11 get lost every day. And nobody says anything about it. It just happens, and then another day occurs. And it happens on that day, and then another day occurs. And if the people of God aren't going to stand up and push against the enemy, then nobody is. So it just goes to reason, it goes to making good sense that we pay attention to what the battleground is. Now, here's the battleground. I think Planned Parenthood is basically on its way out. They're like a chicken with its head cut off. They've been defeated. They're just not smart enough to lay down. But I do believe that Roe versus Wade will disappear sometime in the near future. And there's good reason to believe that. That's not the end of the fight. And I think maybe why they'll go away is because of what the new battleground consists of. Understand what I just said. Abortion. Plan C, the abortion pill. Why do they call it Plan C? Because they had Plan A already. And then they had Plan B. And they have perfected it now. And we have Plan C. There is going to be no need for Planned Parenthood to have anything to do with abortion. Although, if there is going to be an abortion, the actual doing of an abortion is actually a very safe procedure. We got to be fair. Those of us who have fought against it and said, you know, you're in grave danger. No, it's a fairly simple thing that happens. It just has a devastating result. And when we go to this is the most barbaric, evil kind of way to do an abortion. And it's done in the home by the individual. Let that sink in for a minute. So I'm going to talk to you about the two-step regimen that they have, and it's the materials that they use are called mifepristone and mifeprex. So these are the medications. I'm going to go into a little bit of depth. I wished I could do as good a job as Nurse Mary did. I'm just going to do as good a job as I can because I heard her and I was riveted by everything she said. But here's what she's saying. On December 16, 2001, the FDA modified the REMS. And in medical talk, REMS means risk evaluation and migration category. Now, everything that is over on the lit up side, the right side of what I'm showing you, is from a website that is manned by the obstetricians, the Association of Obstetricians in America. So this is all their idea of this particular pill, which is amazing because one of the things that is never mentioned in their website, you go look at their website, and I'll show you the name of it in a few minutes. You go look at their website, they don't present abstinence as a good way for birth control. Doctors. These are doctors. Obstetrician. People who love women and women's issues. People who supposedly love children because they're at the very front of all that. And they don't present abstinence as a good way to do birth control. Last time I looked, it's the best way. You know, you don't get pregnant from a toilet seat. I mean, some have cried out that was what happened, but no, a pregnancy takes two people and a certain kind of action, but they don't bring that up. So they've modified it, and here's what they've modified. Removing the requirements that mifepristone and mifeprozol be dispensed, only in certain healthcare settings, specifically clinics, medical offices, hospitals, referring to as an in-person dispensing requirement. That changed. And the change now is that has been done away with. So the abortion pill is now approved to be available by mail via certified prescription or pharmacies. So you no longer have to go in and talk to a doctor or teleconference with a doctor to get a prescription for the abortion pill. This is not the day after pill. This is a pill that will destroy the fetus that they're talking about. And now it has been unrestricted. Now, the Texas heartbeat bill, called SB 8, it currently now is a felony in Texas for an abortion to occur after a heartbeat is detected by an ultrasonograph. So now you can have, once you get a heartbeat, which is a great reason why most pregnancy centers, Christian pregnancy centers, have what's it called? What are they called? No. Sonograms. No, but what's the person called? Sonographer. Thank you. That's why they have on staff sonographers and sonogram machines, because one of the greatest weapons in convincing a woman that she should keep her baby to full term is seeing the baby move in the womb, seeing what it looks like, recognizing that after 10 weeks it has fingernails, seeing it in a form that looks more like a real person is a huge argument to keep the baby. And so that's why they have those. So they're saying once the heartbeat is picked up by a sonographer, then it becomes a felony to take that life. Now, it's always been a felony, just not recognized as one. I mean, again, the intelligent people are filled with doubt, and the stupid people have taken over. It's a felony to take a life. Throughout the Old Testament, if there's all kinds of laws in the Old Testament that talk about if you damage a baby while it's in the womb of a mother, that's a felony, and you'll be punished. They didn't call them felonies back then, but it's bad news. And you'll be punished for taking a life. So a positive pregnancy test performed by a licensed facility as well as a sonogram is required. Now, once that is done, if that baby is aborted, that is a federal offense, and anybody can sue the person that does it. And by that, they can involve whoever the abortion provider is into deep legal help. That's deep legal problems, and that's why they're suspending all of their abortions. You realize how many lives have been saved while they argue this bill out? thousands in Texas, thousands in Mississippi. And if this heartbeat bill could start in a whole bunch of other states, the same thing will occur, because they're all afraid of the legal problems that it could create for them. So now, these are contradictions for Mefoplex, and Mefoplex is the pill. 70 days gestation, or 10 weeks since the last menstrual period, is when they tell you these are times that you shouldn't do it. These are the restrictions. Using an IUD, ectopic pregnancy, renal gland issues, chronic renal failure, that kind of thing. These are some of the things that if you do this the wrong way, these things can cause. Taking any kind of blood thinner, having bleeding tissues, having blood disorders, and taking certain steroid meds. How often does all that go on? Or any allergy to mifepristone or mifepristol, or meds that contain mifepristol. Do not use if you are breastfeeding. So those are restrictions according to the FDA. Do not buy Mefoplex or its approved generic over the internet. So this is the advice. You should not buy Mefoplex or its appropriate generic over the internet, because you will bypass important safeguards designed to protect your health. Mefoplex and its approved generics have special safety restrictions on how it is distributed to the public. Also, drugs purchased from foreign internet sources are not the FDA-approved variations of the drug, and they are not subject to FDA regulations, manufacturers control, or FDA inspects of manufacturing facilities. So here's how they're doing it. Here's what's happening. When someone wants to get this pill and they don't want any trail, right? They don't want any evidence of what they're doing, they can go on the internet and they can buy it. And they can buy it in India, or they can buy it in China. And there's other places around the world, but those are the main two, India or China. There are a lot of people that dispense drugs out of India, and so they dispense this particular drug. But the problem is you have to have a prescription. To get a prescription, all you have to do is go to the UK, and there are places in the UK that will write the prescription for what it is you want, and they will send it to the pharmacy in India and or China, and you will get the product here. Now, if you live in Texas, it's against the law to buy the product, and you cannot buy the product. So all you do is you just have it delivered to Oklahoma, and you drive to Oklahoma and you pick it up at an Oklahoma post office. And this is what is going on today as we sit here. Let me tell you the major problems when they say it's not FDA controlled. It's important you understand that, because some of the medicines that come out of India are good. I wouldn't take the first medicine from China if you paid me big money. But some of the ones coming out of India are legitimate, just like kind of the product that you would get from Canada, for instance. But here's the problem. Some of those medications, having not been inspected, can be tainted with things. I know from my experience with anabolic steroids, for 2 years I traveled and spoke about anabolic steroids to youth and its effect on your body. Because when a youth would take anabolic steroids, they would have been ordered mostly from China. And so being ordered from China, you would get the anabolic steroids and you would think, I'm taking the same thing Barry Bonds is taking. I'm taking the same thing that Clemens is taking. And thankfully, they got bumped They are not being put into the Hall of Fame because of their steroid abuse. But what young athletes don't understand is most of those steroids were made in Michigan or Florida. And they were made underground, but they were made by people who knew exactly how to do medicines and how to do the right things and get them in the right order so that when you take it, it attacks the right muscle, the correct muscle, and they knew how to do all of that in a very special way. Matter of fact, I had the honor of going up to Colorado Springs and being at the Olympic facility, and we talked to the scientists that run the Olympic facility and how they find cheaters and all that other stuff. And they openly told us that most of the guys that were getting rich on steroids were classmates of theirs who were brilliant chemists. And they were now working for the dark side. But you understand, you remember when you had science? Remember way back when? And they would show you how different aspects of a medication, how it had those little branches that went out. I never knew what all that meant, but it had the little things, and there's a little bit of this in it, a little bit of that in it, a little bit of that in it, a little bit of that in it. Well, these guys were so slick, they would figure out what they're finding when they test somebody for steroids, and they would take it out. So it becomes undetectable again. And then they would catch up, find it again, then they take that out. And then they figured out, hey, if we can take stuff out, we can put stuff in. And so they began to put things in that made your eyes work like superhuman. That's why Barry Bonds looked like a man playing in a child's game, because his eyesight was absolutely perfect from what he was taking. But when you order a steroid and it gets to your mailbox from China, it's likely to have lead paint in it, which is toxic. It's likely to have all kinds of different elements in it. So if a synthetic steroid that Barry Bonds is taking over here is only going to affect his eyes and certain muscle parts because it's that well designed, and what you get from China, it's just going to hit your body and it's going to say, grow muscle, grow. And what ended up happening is many of the youth in America were taking that stuff so that they would be bigger, stronger, so that they would be equipped and ready to be a bigger, better athlete. But what they didn't recognize was these were not FDA, they weren't looked at by anybody, and they basically got in your body, and they're very effective. All steroids are effective. And what they would do is they'd hit your muscles, but they didn't care what muscle they hit. Your heart is a muscle. And by the very nature of the steroids that you take so that your muscles get big, the steroid would hit the heart and it would enlarge the heart. Well, when you enlarge your heart, you have begun heart disease. And the steroid didn't care if you were 14 or 15. That's why every report you've ever heard in the past 2 decades or so where you hear about a fine young athlete who was in great shape and he fell down on the field and he was gone, and they later say cardiac arrest, I say steroids. They now know. They now know the culprit. Steroids from China. And so it's the same thing. You can't take a medicine like this. This is a very complicated medicine anyway. This is a medicine that kills an organism. Kills it. Doesn't wound it. It kills the organism. Now, I'm not a doctor, but I'm trying to figure out, how does it know which organism to kill? And if it's not done right, then it's not a good medicine. You ought to be fearful of it. But when you're in a situation where you're alone, when you're in a situation where you don't see any other way out, and you're in a situation where your culture is saying, it's okay. So this is not your time. You can have a baby later, whatever your situation is. Because guess what? 98% of all abortions in America are done for one reason. convenience. I love this silly argument, and made no better. I mean, this argument was offered in spades, no better than Bill and Hillary Clinton. They were the best at saying this. What about rape and incest? What about the health of the mother? And they would preach that. Okay, if you add those two things up together and you give them another bump, that amounts to about 2% of every pregnancy. Rape, incest, health of a mother. I've always thought, okay, I'll give you those 2%. Give us the 98% back. That convenience is the only reason for the law. It's the only reason it's there, which is, again, an ignorant reason for that. Okay, there are 3 highly advertised websites that women can gather information regarding obtaining the abortion pill. They're online. I've listed them for you. Not so you can hand them out, but I didn't list them, Mary listed them, but you can go to those websites and you can see, because you wonder, how do these kids know? How do they know where to go look? Here, this is well advertised. This is the easiest thing in the world to find, and there they are, black and white, right on the page. And you could open your computer and go to any one of those and get in a long discussion now about how you can receive the pill and exactly what the pill will do. So the at-home abortion options available in Texas: mailed pills with a clinical support, mailed pills without a clinical support, in-person clinical and abortion providers. All of these are ways that they can get the pill. Creative ways to access the pill: information about how people in the states with restrictions across are finding and receiving pills through the mail. And you forward the mail, you pick up the mail in a neighboring state, and you get general delivery in neighboring states. You don't even have to have a P.O. box. It just has to land in a post office that you've designated for it to land in, and you drive in and ask for your mail, and it's handed to you. So, according to the plans on the websites, the at-home abortion options available in Texas are there. So, Plan C, now this is the combination of A and B. We've been through both those ideations, and they're now getting their process perfected. There will probably be a Plan D eventually that is even easier for people to do. But it shows the different medicines and exactly how you can take them. And then method 1 is to take one of the metopristone, then follow it up with a metopristol 24 to 48 hours later. So Plan C claims that the abortion pills will work best in the first 11 weeks of the pregnancy. The method 2 only takes metrosol, which is less effective than the method 1. So they're recommending the 2 different medications, if I can call them that, and one is taken after the other. And you say, well, okay, so then what happens? It's awful what happens. What happens is the baby is born at home. 10 or 11-week-old baby comes out. It's probably in the toilet when they're done. Okay, you're 14, you're 15, you're 17, you're 21. God has made you a woman. He's given you woman parts. Not to go off on our culture, but you don't have a Y chromosome. And without a Y chromosome, you have a desire to mother a child. that is in the heart of every woman. I've never met a woman who lived her life and got to, where she was beginning to realize that that probably a baby is not in my future, that didn't have some consternation around that, sometimes even depression, because you were designed to birth. This isn't birth. This is a traumatic experience that will screw up a child. It's bad enough to walk into a facility and take the medicine that puts you out long enough so that they can do an abortion, and you wake up and you walk away and you know what's happened, but you don't see it. Psychologists will tell you this kind of trauma will show up again and again and again in a person's life. You can't see this all happen without it having a major effect on who you are and your development. People ask me all the time they say, so what's going on in the counseling realm? And I always say, well, mental illness is a big deal and it's growing like crazy, and we're having kind of record numbers, and my heart is, I wish we could go out of business. I wish that people would find a soundness and faith and a joy in life that it wasn't even necessary to have mental counseling. But when you're doing things like this in your culture, how can you avoid that process? These kids are ordering things that they get in the mail. And by the very nature of what it is, they're doing them alone. If they have anybody with them, I'll guarantee you it's someone their age. It's a pal. It's a buddy. You don't recover from that. You might come to know the Lord. You might know the Lord even then, and God may tender healing around it. But this is the kind of thing that stays with you for the rest of your life. We've done a lot of, since I've been involved in pregnancy centers. You have women that come into pregnancy centers many times, and they want to do post-abortive work. And when you begin to interview them, you find out that their abortion was 30, 40, 50 years ago. And God loved them. They'd come in with the courage of a David, saying, I need to deal with it. This has haunted me my entire life. It's cost me marriages. It's cost me turmoil within my family. It's hurt my relationship with the kids that I now have. I live in pain over that child, and they will take them through a 12, 13-week process. And at the end of the process, they're able to forgive themselves and move on. And one of the things that I got to do was I got to come in and be the last time they would come together. And at that time, each person would stand up, walk to the front, and they would have a candle, and they would light a candle, and they, in the process of getting over it, they would have named their child. They would have prayed about what gender their child was, and so they might have had a little girl or a little boy, and they would say their name, and then they would light a candle, and they would ceremoniously give their pain back to God and recognize that they were going to move on in life, and when they died, they would be in the presence of their child. We have the biblical basis for that in 1 Samuel, when David did his mistake with Bathsheba and the baby fell sick, and he brooded and hated himself. And then once the baby died, he got up, and his attendants feared for his life, because he was in such depression while the baby was ill. But once the baby died, he cleaned himself up, he bathed, he ate, and they even questioned him. They said, we don't understand something. While the baby was alive, you were in such horrible shape, and now that it's died, You've resumed everything as a king. And he said, because I cannot go to where the baby is, and the baby cannot come back to me, but one day I will go where he is, and I will see him, and I will know him. And on the basis of that scripture, we would do a memorial. And at the end of the memorial, they would light the candle. I'd watch little girls get up. One little girl lit six candles. 6. It's appalling. And I remember she was a sweet little black girl. And I thought to myself, abortionists attack the black community. They target them. They always have. Margaret Sanger started abortions by targeting African Americans. She was no better than Adolf Hitler. Same philosophy. And that led to now abortion by demand, legalized abortion in our world. And I would say to Black Lives Matter, you want something to march about, you want something to be your focus. Why haven't you made that your focus? You've made the focus around a small amount of people who were wrongly treated, many of them who lost their lives. This is a monstrous, enormous millions of people, your people, who lost their lives before they were ever even available to start. There's your cause. So, this is the ACOG is the website that I'm telling you about. So the clinician should confirm pregnancy and estimated gestation age. For parents with regular menstrual cycles, a certain last menstrual period within the prior 56 days and no signs of symptoms or risk factors for ectopic pregnancy, a clinical examination or ultrasound examination is not necessary before the medication abortion. They've taken the teeth out of it. They're saying you don't even have to see a doctor. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is go to a website and know how to order it. So if the RH status is unknown, testing is recommended. The RH has to do with research, and they're saying if you think you have a problem, you should see some sort of clinician. It used to be medication abortion can be provided safely and effectively by a telemedicine. Telemedicine improves access to early abortion care, particularly in areas that lack a healthy care practitioner. Medication abortion through telemedicine has been evaluated in observational studies and found to be equal effective as an in-person visit. So if you live in a state where they allow it, you can call your OBGYN, visit over the phone or in a teledoc situation, and order the pill. Get your prescription, and you're on your way. This is the new battleground, there's no question. You know, we can walk around with signs around abortion clinics. You can speak out against them. You can pray that they go away, and we should do all that. But the point is, boy, the focus is moved. It's moved quickly and effectively. This is a vile enemy that has quickly and effectively taken over the fight again. So this was to make you aware of that going on. And I can't wait for Sunday to talk about sanctity of life, and I'm probably not going to talk much about this. And this is the reason why I wanted to do it on Wednesday night, and we did stream it. But it's so important for us all to know, but at the same time, I don't even think it has enough decorum to be talked about on a Sunday morning. And yet I believe every Christian ought to know this exists. Every Christian ought to fight against it. Every Christian woman ought to get in the big middle of your OBGYN and ask some pretty straight, hard questions. And if they can't answer them, I wouldn't go back to that person. This is pulling in an entire medical community, a different part of a medical community, the part of the medical community that is supposed to protect childbirth. Pulling them on in. Everybody in. So, take this, read it. You'll do a better job reading it than hearing me read it, and hopefully you'll understand it. There are every website that she pulled something off of is right there, and if you want to make a deeper, fuller study of it. But this is where legally we need to be looking. This is where we need to be battening down the hatches at this point. You know, and I was just thinking about it. You know, when a medicine comes out and it gets a generic, what does that tell you about the medicine? It tells you that it's very popular and that it works. They don't just hand out generics. The medicine is productive, skillful, does exactly what it says it's going to do. And it's all wrong. It's all wrong. So, Father, help us. Help us to be strong in how we fight, actually war against what is not in your will. There's not any part of the abortion industry that is about you. It's all the enemy. It's all wrong. And Father, I pray that you'd forgive us as a nation. It is clearly our nationalistic sin. When Israel committed its nationalistic sin, you spread them all over the world and didn't bring them back till 1948. And Father, just to be fair to them, we are facing a similar kind of judgment. I believe many of the problems we face today, we face because we have legalized abortion in this land. It's a blight against everything sacred. We are a country that was started with a morality, and we've lost our way. So, Father, I pray that you would take those of us who know Christ, who speak his name and long to do his purpose, that you would put us in this battle and help us to fight with all we have, that we would save the children. It's the most dangerous place in America today for a child is the womb of a mother. That's a disgrace and a blight against us as a country. So, Father, I pray you'd heal us in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you all for coming.